Now that we have our modeling window open, we can begin inputting our columns into our model. To do this, we will need to be looking at our sheets S1, S2, and S5. And to begin, we will need to switch to our members page. And within our steel section, here we have a member add column. And since I'm going to be reusing this icon a lot, I'm just going to pin this to my quick access as well. And to start, we are going to start with our column at grid lines A1. So this point right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and click on the member add column. And when we click on that icon, we notice a bar that gets populated right below where our snaps and our modifiers would be. So to begin with, we will just go from left to right and go through some of these settings on this member add options bar. At the very left here is where we can specify what section size we're going to use for our column. So if we refer to our sheet S1 and we look at our anchor bolt plan, we can see that the column that we're using at A1 is a UC 254 by 254 by 73. So if we wanted to, we can come in here and we could type that in this field right here, or if we hit this little yellow button here, it'll bring up a select material window, and we can come in here and we can actually search for this section size. So if you want to find it by going through this list right here, see, it'd be this one right here, or if you wanted to search it up in this find, you could type in UC 254 and it would take you to the first instance where it would see that in the list. This is a 254 by 254 by 73, so I'm going to select that and I'm going to say OK, and now you can see that updates there. To the right here, we have some buttons that are grayed out. This is going to be based off of the section size or the material that you choose. So this first one will specify what the toe direction is, whether that's in or out. So if you had like a channel or an angle and you wanted to specify if that toe was in or out, that you could choose that button right there. If you want the section reversed, and then this third one is if you would want to choose double or single material. In this case, our section size doesn't allow us to specify any of those options, so we'll just move on. The next is going to be dealing with our bottom end settings for this column. So here is where we could specify what our connection type is. So right now this is set to auto standard, but if I click on this arrow right here, it's going to drop down and give us some more options. So this is auto standard. This would be our user defined connection if we wanted to specify that. This would be our plain end. This is our auto base cap plate. This would be our user base cap plate. So this is would be if we wanted to specify something out of our base cap plate schedule that we already set up. This would be if we want a splice plate connection. This would be for a clip angle, and this would be a shear tab connection. In this case, we're actually going to specify a user base cap plate, so we'll go ahead and click on this icon here. And then to the right, we can see that by default, it wants to use the number 1 out of our base cap plate schedule. So to specify this, what we can do is we can browse for this, and it's going to actually open up our base and cap plate schedule. For this column, we will be using our BP1, so that is our number 1, so we can go ahead and select that and say OK. To the right of that will be our bottom end elevation. Right now, we are at our anchor bolt elevation of 0, so we won't have to make any changes to this. To the right of that is what our top end connection is going to be. So we could specify if we want an auto standard and any of these other connection types like a user base cap plate, or if we had an auto base cap plate. For now, we're just going to keep this as auto standard. And if it's set to auto standard, we don't have anything to specify here. And then for our top end elevation, if we refer to our sheets, we can see that these elevations are going, we can see that these columns are going up to our roof framing plan elevation, which would be 8,129. So what I can do is I can come in here and I can hit this lock button, and I can type in my top end elevation. So for this, I'm going to type in 8,129. And then to the right of that, it wants us to specify our column rotation, if we have a column rotation. So the rotations are going to follow the web of the member. So a 0 degree will have the web running horizontally. A 90-degree rotation would have the web of the column running vertically. So if we look at our sheet, we can see that we have the column at A1, the web is running vertically, so we would need to specify a 90-degree rotation here. So what I can do here is I can either type it in here, or if I hit this 90 button, it's going to automatically put that in there for me. And then this last button over here is to launch member edit. And we can look into that here in a second. If I would click this on, you can see it turns it to like a little green icon. If I check it off again, it's red, so it's telling me that that's off. I'm going to keep it off right now, but what that would do is after I would pick a point to input this column in, it would automatically open up that member edit screen, and I will show that here in a little bit. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and locate this column at our grid line A1. So I'm just going to left click at A1, and if I zoom in here, we can see that our column, we have a column UC 254 by 254 by 73 with a rotation of 90 degrees input in at that location. So now we can see, if we're looking at our sheets, we can see that we have the same exact column at a couple different locations within our model. So we have that same column at B and 1, D1, at D in grid line 3, and then at grid line A and grid line 3. And we can see that all of those columns are rotated at a 90 degrees. So what we could do is we could come in here and we could just left click and locate those columns at those same instances, or if we look at our button bindings down in the lower left, we can see that our middle click is a repeat command. So if I go to my B1 and I just middle click, it's going to repeat that command and it's going to put that column in there the same way for me. So what I'm going to do here now is go through the other locations and just repeat that command. So at D1, we have the same column, so I'm going to middle click there again. And then I'm going to scroll out and then kind of back in here. And at D3 and A3, we have the same columns as well. So I'm going to repeat here. And then I'm going to go all the way over to A3 and I'm going to middle click one more time. And now we have all of our columns for that section size in our model. So next we can move on to our column at C1. So if we're looking at our sheet S1, we can see that that is a UC 203 by 203 by 71. And we have that same column at a couple different locations as well. So first, I'm going to come over here to my section size, and I'm just going to change that section size. So this will be a 203 by 203 by 71. I'll select that. Again, we won't be able to specify any of these grayed out options here. For our bottom end connection, we will have a user base cap plate, and we will be using our BP3 base plate. So if we knew the number, we could type it in here. In this case, I don't, so I'm going to browse for that BP3, and I'm going to select BP3 and say OK. We are still at our 0 elevation, so that's okay. Our top end settings, we're going to leave set to auto standard. And these columns are going to be going up to our roof elevations like our previous one. So we will keep that 8,129 elevation the same. And now if we refer to our sheet S1, we can see that that column at C1 has a column rotation of 0 because the web is going horizontal. So now what we can do is we can just place that at C1. And if we zoom in, we can see that that rotation changed and that we have a 203 by 203 by 71. And if we refer to our sheets, we can see that we have the same instance at C3. So I'm going to come down here to C3 and I'm going to middle click and place that column there. And now we got to be careful here. At A2 and B3, we see we have the same section size, but if you look at our rotations, they are following a 90-degree rotation. So what we can do is we can come up here, we can specify our 90-degree rotation, and we don't have to change anything else because we're using the same section size and they're going up to the same elevation. So now that we have that 90 degree specified, we can come in here and we can add at A and 2 and also at B and 3. So I'm going to middle click there to repeat that command. And if you've noticed, we do have the same section size at B2 and C2. If you look closely on your sheet S2, those two columns will go up to a little bit higher elevation at 8,371 instead of our 8,129 elevation. So we will have to change that again. And also the columns at those two locations are following a 0-degree rotation. So we are using the same section size there as well. We can come over here and change our elevation from 8,129 to 8,371. And then we can hit our 0 button for our 0-degree rotation. And then we can come locate those two columns at B2 and C2. So I'll just left click at B2 and I will repeat that command at C2. So I will middle click at C2 here. So we have a couple more columns at this point that we need to put into our model. We have, if we look at our grid line D, we have a UC 203 by 203 by 46, and that can go at D 1.9 and at D 2.1. So to start, we'll go up here and we'll change our section size. So we need to find 203 by 203 by 46, which is right here. We'll go ahead and say OK to that. We will be using a user-based cap plate, so we can keep that set there. and it will be our BP3. So we could set BP3 and say OK. We will be going from elevation 0 up to our elevation 4,624. So our bottom elevation is good. Our top end elevation we need to change. So we need to specify 4,624, or our second floor framing plan. And if we look at our sheets, we see that these columns have a 0-degree rotation, so that's fine. We can come in here and locate both of those columns. So that'll be at D1.9, and again at D in 2.1. So I'll middle click at 2.1. And if we zoom in, we can see that our section size and our column rotation is the same. And then I will focus to look at our two columns on grid line E and 1.9 and 2.1 as well. So this will be a different section size again. This will be a CHS. So in this case, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to search CHS 114.3 by 4.5. As you can see, nothing is coming up here, and that is because we don't have our filtered on for pipe. So what we would need to do is check on for pipe, and then I can come up here and click again, and now we can see it jumps to that section. So this is the section size we need. I'm going to go ahead and select that. For our bottom end settings, we're going to be using a user-based cat plate, and we're going to be using our BP5 for this column. So I'm going to go ahead and browse for our BP5, select BP5, say OK. And then we are starting at our 0 elevation, and we are going up to our landing elevation, which is 2,190. So I'm going to go ahead and specify 2,190 here. And we will have a 90-degree rotation, so I'm going to specify 90. And then I'm going to come to grid lines E and 1.9, and I'm going to place or locate the first column here. And then I'm going to specify or locate my second column at grid line E and 2.1. And if we zoom in, we can see that we have those section sizes and columns located in those positions. And then last but not least, we do have one more column. If you are looking at your sheets S1 and S2, we can see that we have that column at, if we look at our sheets, we can see we have that column at grid line D and 2, and it's going from our second floor framing plan up to our roof framing plan. So this one's going to be a little bit different than our previous ones. Our section size is going to be an SHS, so we can come up here to our section size, and we can find our SHS section size, and it's going to be a 150 by 150 by 8. So that's the one that it selects for us there. I'm going to say OK to this. For our bottom end settings, we're actually going to change this from a user base to an auto standard. It's going to gray out that field because we can't specify anything for an auto standard. And then our starting elevation for our bottom is going to be our second floor framing plan. So that's going to start at 4,624. We can lock that value in there. Our top is going to be an auto base cap plate as well, and then that elevation is going to be our roof elevation. So we're going to type in 8,371, and then we will keep our 90-degree rotation on that. And now that that's set, we can go ahead and locate it D2. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check on this launch member edit to show you what this does. So now that that's green, we have that option checked on. So if I left click here and locate this last column at D2, we'll notice that our column edit window will come up. So that's what that last option will do. If that was turned on, every time you would locate a column, it would launch this member edit window. And then this is where you can go through and edit anything about this column or anything about your column. You can see your member end elevation for your bottom, top settings, and we will look through this window here in a second. For now, I'm just going to cancel out, and I'm going to right click to get out of the member add column command, and if I zoom out, we can see that at all of our locations, we have all of our columns into our model. Now that we have all of our members input into our model, if I wanted to view my columns to see if they were input incorrectly, we could turn them from the stick form that they are in now into solids, and there's a couple different ways we can do this. First, if I wanted to hit SA on my keyboard, that is the keyboard shortcut to turn all to solid opaque. I could do that, or I could highlight all of them, and I could right click, and I could come up here to my member styles, and I could choose if I want to see them in stick, solid opaque, solid transparent, or solid transparent main. Or if I come to my display page, in my members section, I have a couple different options here. This is my change all to solid opaque. If I drop that down, these are the change all to solid transparent and transparent main, and then this one to the right is change all to stick. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the change all to solid opaque, and we can see all of our columns. If we zoom in, all of our columns are going to be in solid form now. So we could pan around our column and look at each of our columns and see that we have all of them turning to solid. Another thing I could do to view my columns in a little different way is to look at them in an isometric view. So if I zoom in on my column at A and 1, and I hit my shift button on my keyboard, we can see that when I hit my shift button on my keyboard, the middle click turns into rotate. So I can hit shift on my keyboard and I can middle click on a member and rotate around that member to view that in an isometric view. And then we can zoom out and we can see all of our columns in an isometric view. So we could shift and middle click and rotate around some more. However, right now we do see that those columns look a little bit short, and that is due to having our depth check on. So right now we are only able to see 1000 millimeters in and out of our screen. If I would uncheck my depth check to turn it off, we can see that we see all of those columns at their full length. And then I can rotate around here, and we can view our columns in that manner.